Hannibal's Oath and the Road to War. The Mediterranean world in the 3rd century BCE was a battleground for dominance between two rising superpowers, Rome and Carthage. The First Punic War, 264 to 241 BCE, had already shattered Carthaginian supremacy, forcing the once great maritime empire to surrender its hold over Sicily and pay crippling war reparations to Rome. But from the ruins of this defeat, one man was destined to rise, a man whose name would be spoken in both awe and fear by the Romans. His name was Hannibal Barca. His path to war began with a solemn oath taken in childhood, an oath that would shape one of the greatest military campaigns in history. The boy who swore eternal hatred for Rome. Born in 247 BCE, Hannibal was the son of Hamilcar Barca, a brilliant Carthaginian general. The name Barca meant thunderbolt, a fitting title for a family whose destiny was to strike Rome with unrelenting force. Hamilcar, though defeated in the First Punic War, never accepted Carthage's humiliation. Instead, he sought to rebuild its power by expanding Carthaginian influence in Hispania, modern Spain, a land rich in resources and manpower. When Hannibal was a young boy, perhaps no older than 9, his father prepared to depart for Spain with his army. As legend has it, Hannibal, filled with a child's eagerness, begged to accompany his father, but Hamilcar, before allowing his son to join him, took him to a sacred temple. There, in the presence of the gods, he made the boy swear an unbreakable oath to forever be an enemy of Rome. This moment, whether entirely factual or slightly mythologized, became one of the most significant events in history. It instilled in Hannibal a hatred for Rome that would burn for the rest of his life, influencing his every decision and leading him down a path of war and destruction. The training of a military genius. Hannibal grew up in the camp of warriors. Unlike Roman aristocrats, who were trained in political affairs as much as in warfare, Hannibal's education was solely military. He studied strategy, tactics, siege warfare, and leadership under the tutelage of his father and later under his brother-in-law, Hasdrubal the Fair, who succeeded Hamilcar after his death in 228 BCE. By the time Hannibal reached adulthood, he was not just a soldier, he was a commander of men, already experienced in battle and deeply committed to Carthaginian supremacy. When Hasdrubal was assassinated in 221 BCE, the army immediately proclaimed Hannibal as their leader. The Carthaginian government, recognizing his potential, confirmed him as commander of the forces in Spain. Hannibal, at just 26 years old, was now the master of an army hardened by years of conquests, and he had only one goal: to fulfill his oath and bring war to Rome. The spark that ignited the Second Punic War. Hannibal knew that a direct naval assault on Rome was impossible. Carthage had lost its dominance at sea after the First Punic War. Instead, he devised a plan so daring that it would go down in history as one of the most audacious military campaigns ever conceived. But first, he needed a reason to go to war. Rome, ever wary of Carthaginian expansion, had imposed a treaty forbidding Carthage from crossing the Ebro River in Spain. However, the city of Saguntum, a Roman ally, lay south of the river. Hannibal, recognizing an opportunity, besieged and destroyed Saguntum in 219 BCE. Rome, outraged, demanded that Carthage surrender Hannibal. The Carthaginian Senate, divided and fearful of Roman aggression, hesitated. But Hannibal had already decided his course. War was inevitable, and he would take the fight to the very heart of Italy. The march through the Alps, an unthinkable feat. Instead of launching a conventional war, Hannibal planned one of the most ambitious invasions in history. Rather than facing the Romans head-on in Spain or North Africa, he resolved to do the unthinkable: march his army over the Alps and invade Italy from the north. It was a plan fraught with danger, but also one that Rome would never expect. In the spring of 218 BCE, Hannibal set out from Spain with an army of around 90,000 infantry, 12,000 cavalry, and 37 war elephants. Along the way, he fought through hostile tribes and treacherous terrain, eventually arriving at the base of the mighty Alps. Many of his men doubted the feasibility of the journey. The Alps were an impassable barrier, a frozen wall of death where supplies were scarce and the elements were merciless. But Hannibal's unwavering leadership inspired them to push forward. The crossing was brutal, Freezing temperatures, avalanches, and hostile mountain tribes took a devastating toll. By the time Hannibal's army emerged on the other side, he had lost nearly half his men. Yet he had done the impossible. He had brought an army complete with war elephants into the heart of Italy. Rome was completely unprepared. The road to war, Hannibal's genius. Unleashed with Italy now open before him, Hannibal launched a series of battles that shook Rome to its core. He engaged and decimated Roman forces at the Battle of Trebia, 218 BCE, tricking them into charging into icy waters where his troops lay in ambush. He followed this with an even greater victory at Lake Trasimene, 217 BCE, where he ambushed a Roman army, slaughtering over 15,000 soldiers in a single day. Then came his masterpiece, the Battle of Cannae, 216 BCE. Outnumbered nearly 2-1, Hannibal executed a perfect double envelopment, surrounding and annihilating an army of nearly 80,000 Romans. It was one of the greatest military victories in history. For a moment, Rome teetered on the brink of collapse. Some of its allies defected to Hannibal. Yet despite all his victories, Hannibal never marched on Rome itself. Historians have long debated why. Some argue he lacked the siege equipment. Others suggest he hoped Rome's allies would rebel and bring the city down from within. Regardless, Rome adapted. The Republic refused to fight Hannibal in open battle again, instead adopting a strategy of attrition under Quintus Fabius Maximus, the man who became known as the Delayer. The legacy of Hannibal's oath. For 15 years, Hannibal remained in Italy, undefeated in battle. But eventually Rome, under Scipio Africanus, struck back by attacking Carthage itself. In 202 BCE, Hannibal was recalled to defend his homeland, leading to the climactic Battle of Zama, where he suffered his first and only major defeat. The war was over. Rome had won. Hannibal spent his later years in exile, always pursued by Roman agents. In 183 BCE, when he realized he was about to be captured, he took poison rather than fall into Roman hands. His last words, according to legend, were, "Let us relieve the Romans from their anxiety, who think it long to await the death of an old man." But Hannibal's true legacy was not in how he died, but in how he lived. The boy who swore an oath of hatred against Rome grew into one of the greatest military commanders in history. His war reshaped the ancient world, forcing Rome to become the superpower it was destined to be. And though he was Rome's greatest enemy, even his adversaries recognized his brilliance. For centuries after his death, Roman mothers would still frighten their children with the words, "Hannibal ad portas." Hannibal is at the gates.